27. Fathers Day Fiasco. When Vic returned from India, he moved from Philly to D.C. along with the other members of 108. Temple grounds in D.C. were rather old and spread around, not grand. Vic lived in a little shed on the grounds that was previously used for storage. He had a place of his own. He slept in the attic. It was a hovel, but it was his. Even so, the local management didn't want him to have it, but Vic persevered, based on his need to have a private space to create for the band. We visited the D.C. temple and were treated nicely. We got to meet some of the local people who used the temple like a regular church. They were of Indian descent and were happy to have any type of functioning temple. Some of the members had daughters. There were two sisters in particular who were quite good looking, and they had their eye on Vic. He was semi-famous and intriguing within his circles as a musical performer. My dad was a physician, by now retired, but still able to obtain drugs easily because his medical license was still in force. His drug of choice was prednisone, a steroid. He said it made him feel strong again. It raised his blood pressure, and that made him more energetic. At 80 years old, he spent hours in the yard pushing and pulling at the helpless plants. Since he lived in Naperville, just outside of Chicago, spring was a busy time, and it was now spring. But this spring didn't work out so well for my dad. Early one morning, he had chest pains so severe that my mom called the ambulance. EKGs were inconclusive, so they performed an angiogram, which was followed immediately by angioplasty to unblock a key artery. Procedures went well, and he was released the next morning. When Anita went to visit, he was out in the yard again working on something. Nothing Anita, Joe, or I could say would convince him that better care and fewer drugs were in his best interest. We worried about him more than he worried about himself. Father's Day was approaching, and I was looking forward to a call from my son and a pleasant day. Linda prepared a nice meal and set a happy mood. Time wore on, so we tried calling him, but he wasn't at the temple. I descended into a black mood, waiting for the call that never came. Vic got in touch by phone a day or two later, but I'd reached my limit and wrote a letter, the following letter to him. This is now quoting exactly from the letter. Vic, we're writing this letter because the events of this Father's Day require explanation. From your point of view, this was probably just like all the other trivial non-Christian holidays, and missing by one day wasn't such a bad performance. For us, however, this is not an isolated incident, but just the next in a long line. You are our only child, and we focus all of our parenting attention on you. This is neither your doing nor will you undo it. It is so. Our hopes for you range from the basic healthy body to happiness through to great success in your endeavors. Always we thought you would be an important part of our family. At this time of your life, it is easy for us to understand that family doesn't come first and that you are very busy trying to establish yourself professionally. Unfortunately, we feel we're being crowded out of even a minor role in your life, and that your religion is doing this to us. Mark my words, I am not talking about 5,000-year-old Vedic teachings. I'm talking about the ISKCON organization. Their rules and practices have slowly but steadily removed us from your world. Just two examples, food and holidays. You're vegetarian. Okay, don't eat meat. Stricter. Okay. Don't support organizations that support meat, on and on, until the only food you will eat is prepared by devotees, and the only places in which you will eat are run by devotees. They have achieved total isolation. Yes, we are allowed into your circle if we follow your rules, even if only for a few hours. You have relented and will eat food prepared in our home by your rules, and we are grateful for this. Holidays should be times of joy. Almost every American holiday has a major ISKCON event close by. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Father's Day. You're occupied and distracted. Again, we are free to go in your direction, but you cannot move in our direction. Slowly, all non-devotees are pushed out of significant roles in your life. Apparently, it is a goal of the ISKCON policies. To us, this is a big price to pay. So what's the reward? Let's examine your progress under the Hare Krishna influence. You live in a little one-room shack. Management want to give your possession to someone else. You fought against it and have probably won the right to remain. Isn't this materialism, even if it's about a little shack and not an expensive sports car? According to the Vedic scriptures, one life should be divided into 4 major phases, each lasting about 25 years. I probably don't pronounce these correctly. Brahmachari, Grastya, Vanaprastha, and finally Sannyasi. It is only in the final phase that one reaches the true spiritual fulfillment. Here you are, the student, the brahmachari, yet you are willing and you think yourself able to make complex judgments of right and wrong, or of an individual's worth, or of what must be. Your progress as a writer-songwriter is faltering. Both quantity and quality are down. Reread some of your old poems. I just did. You are unsettled and unsatisfied. When you returned from India, you said that you had a fresh realization of the importance of one's family. That was very promising, and perhaps led us to expect what we should not. My disappointment in your failure to write in advance or to call on Father's Day caused a release of my frustration. We have put a lot of effort into understanding your actions and motivations. We had some success in accepting your choices and affiliations, but are still without a clue as to what you think you are doing. When you missed Father's Day, a black mood overtook us, and we thought that our efforts are in vain. The wall stands as tall as before. We realize that you were and are still a headstrong, willful boy who will do whatever he pleases. It's a very sad realization, but we see it clearly now. Therefore, our relationship has passed through a doorway, and it is impossible to retrace our steps and return to the other side. That time is forever gone. There are only memories, sweet dreams, and the dark, unknowable future. Present is prologue to the future. Our hopes and spirits ride on a very low tide. When you read this, you'll probably have 1,000 reasons why we were wrong and why you are totally justified in what you do. Save them and answer just one question for us, but answer only in your words. Why? The day after sending the letter, I reread it. I realized that the tone was over the top and tried to pull back a little from the brink I was pushing towards. So I followed up with another letter. Vic, I was thinking about the letter we just sent you and imagine your reaction. I hope you're not too put off. I think it's time we were as honest as possible with each other. I also thought you were probably asking a question like, just what do they want from me? Good question. I want to be in your thoughts. I want you to think about me and feel good inside. I want to be important to you just as you are important to me. I want to feel you returning my love. I don't want to love the void. In order that we may remain in each other's thoughts, we need to share. That's why I read your books and eat prasadam and cook for Krishna. I'm trying to be a part of your life. I have no need for any of these things except that they bring me closer to you. When love is a one-way street, it is very sad and depressing. If this is a one-way street, please let me know so I can abandon false hope and make the best of what I am left. I want to hear from you. Love always, Dad. After a few days, a letter from Vic arrived. It was written before he read my letters. Dear Dad, I'm totally sorry for screwing up on Father's Day. I mean it, I'm sorry. There's no excuses, but I just want to say that I was totally busy that entire weekend, traveling all over the Northeast between Philly, New York, and Potomac, and there were 1,000,002 things going on. I have to write down my day timer to call you that Sunday, but the weekend was so busy I never even got around to opening up my day timer that day. It's not an excuse, but just to let you know it's not because I never think of you or something, but because of extraordinary circumstances. I'm really sorry. When I woke up on Monday morning, I realized that yesterday was Father's Day. I called you a few times when I thought you'd be just getting into work, but you're never at your desk and the answering machine wasn't on either. I'm sorry. When we finally did talk, you expressed concern about my life. Now, I don't know if this is really the issue or what. I mean, I don't know if it was just your way of trying to communicate something more subtle to me, something which went over my head, or if you literally meant what you said. Anyway, if you did literally mean what you said, that you're worried about my life going right, etc., I just need to say that your worry definitely couldn't be more misplaced. I know you may not be able to relate with this, but, well, anyway, my life. I mean, one thing you don't have to worry about is my life being good. You should really know that I'm already set in my life. I mean, I know you'll have a tough time relating to this, but I'm really experiencing firsthand what it means to be liberated. I don't know how to put it to you so that you don't freak out. Maybe I shouldn't even say it at all. But I want to say that so you don't have to worry. It's pretty simple. My life's plans are completely basic and simple and achieved. My only plan is to serve Krishna. That's my plan. Exactly what particular way I do that, that's a detail. In other words, if my entire life fell apart tomorrow, the band fell apart, no one's interested in my writing, I got a big fat zit on my nose and whatever, it wouldn't shatter me. Because all these things are not the plan itself, but the particular details of the plan. and those details I can switch around in a second without sweating. It may not seem that way to you. It may be hard for you to see this, but one thing you can do is just believe it, because I say it, and I'm your son, and why would I lie to you? I can also try to explain it to you, I guess. Like I said earlier, in a realistic sense, I'm already liberated from the material world. I know this sounds crazy after all, but what can I tell you? What I mean by this is, whether things material go up or down does not ultimately affect me in the same way as it used to. In other words, I'm kind of impervious to material success or disaster. Why? Because my interests are totally removed from that whole arena. I guess this might sound totally pompous to you or something, but I'm trying to open up my heart and explain how I live and feel so you can have a better grip on what's going on with your son. All right, back to the action. Although I am in that position, aloof from the ups and downs, I still deal with the ups and downs voluntarily. I willfully involve myself in the ups and downs of putting out a band, for example. So it appears that my life is not really all that much different than from, say, Zach's life. But it's different because the band, for me, is a detail of a particular way in which I carry out my main plan of glorifying Krishna. I try to think of a less goofy-sounding word than glorifying if I couldn't. If my band crashes, no big deal. I can just pull myself out of that wreck and keep going towards my destination in one of countless other possible methods. But if someone like Zach's band crashes, his whole life is kaput. Although I am ultimately detached from success or failure, in a higher sense, I'm attached to success. It's my devotional service. If I have to pull out, it doesn't shatter me, but I do want to dedicate myself to this particular service, 108, at least for some time, and dedicate myself entirely. So in that sense, your advice about my tendency to quit as I get close to the goals, that's always going to be totally appreciated by me. I don't know if this was the right thing to do, but I tried to explain to you something intimate about my life, and I hope it won't press the wrong buttons in your heart. As far as the band goes, I'm totally for it, headlong. I'm going to make it more powerful than any other hardcore band ever. I'm working on it so hard right now, and it's going to come together and work, even if I have to physically pull it together with my teeth. I'm determined, in other words, so you don't have to be too worried. To tell you the truth, there's a point where I was seriously considering changing the details on my plans in a big way. In other words, can the band, the hardcore scene, and everything. But I spent a lot of time scrutinizing the idea and decided it was more laziness on my part than anything else which made me feel that way. Basically, let me sum up this letter. I'm the last person you have to worry about. At least that's my own opinion. What can I say? I hope you like this letter, but I'm not sure if you will. Anyway, I'll just send it and try to stop saying anyway so much. Love, Vic. That was a measured, semi-contrite response to missing an event that was pretty expected. Vic's response to my actual letter was shattering. Dear Mom and Dad, it looks like you wrote these letters before you got mine, but I doubt that'd make much difference. Maybe something, I don't know, anyway. Maybe I should tell you that I share my problems with you because I thought you would like it. I figured it was something you as parents could get into, helping me out, which seems to be a really enjoyable activity for parents, and I can totally understand why. I'm not saying it in a negative way. The point is, maybe that's why you think I'm so unsettled, unsatisfied. Time will prove if you don't believe me on face value. I can understand your frustration, the way you describe me being the only focus of your parenting. Like you said, it's just the way it is. Maybe I'll yet be an important part of the family in a way we don't see yet. Maybe not. I'm sorry if you don't consider me an important part of the family. It's honestly not my goal in life. I'm sorry if that hurts, but you did want honesty. Call it ego, but I tend to think that I am a pretty important part of the family. I could get into it, but I think it's ugly to do so. Anyway, I will. What family anyway? Where's a great thing to be a part of? Grandma Mindy is one aspect, Grandma Connie's another. Grandpa Leo, Grandma Jean. Where's the great solidarity even without me? Where's the great unit that I'm forfeiting? In their own ways, I respect them all, and you'd be surprised to respect who I respect and for what reason. But the nitty-gritty is there's an awful lot of bile in the whole relationship. Are you guys experiencing so much joy from the whole thing? Is that why you're disappointed that I'm not involved in the same way you want me to be? I don't see such a joyful experience going on. Some people I like more than others. No, it's not very spiritual of me, but it's honest. I like Aunt Janet, and I honestly like you both. I think I still like Aunt Bug. Somehow or another, I'm thinking of my relationship with these different people, not in terms of being a part of some family, but just between individuals. I think you kind of hinted at this in your letter. It's not really so unusual that you're being pushed out of my life. What else is supposed to happen? When you get married and move away, how do your parents feel? Imagine how they felt if you were their only child. Now, marriage is a common thing, and people can quickly accept it as a fact of life, even maybe become happy about it. But it's the same effect is caused by something as obnoxious as Hare Krishnas. You can easily see how it would be so much easier to continue feeling depressed and resentful. Whereas no one blames the society for marriage, it's easy to blame some weird religious cult for doing the same thing. Being pushed out of a minor role? Well, I wouldn't say your role is gigantic, but I don't think it's minor, and I don't think it's being pushed out. Look, anyway, I'm a bit fried out too, so I need to do some griping as well, and I hope it won't get too ugly, but yeah, you're right. I am thinking, give me a break. Just accept this one simple fact. I'm not going to be who you thought I would be. Unless you want to get real abstract about it, I'm never going to be that person. Unless your idea of what you want me to be changes, or unless you start to see things differently. Give me a break means, so what? Vegetarianism is come on. You think your rock and roll didn't alienate you? You think that people don't do things that don't screw up their parents' brains? So I reject everything. Well, I'm damn happy that I do. I don't like the way anything happens among people. I think it honestly all stinks, from the grocery store checkout lines to the riots. I don't like it. And I'm happy that I do the things that I see. I'm happy that I don't do the things that I see causing it to be that way. Honestly, if you think this is all hunky-dory life, I think you're kidding yourself. I know you don't think that way. I know that there are plenty of things you think suck, but you just don't come to the conclusion. So many things stink, constantly stinking, yet somehow your arithmetic still adds up to joy. Yeah, there's some good things. Why shouldn't there be all good things? Anyway, let's skip the philosophy. Just understand this. I'm damn happy. I reject the things I do, and I can't understand why you expect that you're unwilling. I'm not trying to establish myself professionally. I think you may have misunderstood this from my last letter. I don't have a profession, and I'm already established. You, frankly, can't understand what progress I've made under the influence because you totally can't relate. Let me ask you, what splendid progress have you made in your whole life? My fighting against being evicted from the shack is not materialism because I felt that I needed the shack to properly do my service to Krishna. Does it make you cringe to hear that? What can I do? If you want to understand me, understand me. The proof of this is that when I saw that I could have a different situation which would be just as congenial to my service, I happily took it. It's different from materialism, if you even really care about knowing, or maybe you just want to shoot me down, because the motivation is different. Materialism means selfish interest. Spiritualism means Krishna's interest. The actions may often be the same, but the motivation is different. My own words, damn Hare Krishna scripture talking, they are my own words. I could say the same thing about you. Damn talk show scripture talking. Damn library Hindu books talking. Damn middle class upbringing talking. Anyway, what I say are my own words, as much as anyone else has their own words. According to Vedic scriptures, I'm frankly surprised that you'd actually be so big to believe that you understand Vedic scriptures better than me. Are you crazy? Doesn't that strike you as a totally wild idea that you want to argue with me about Vedic this and that? 4 orders of life and now you know it all? This is, honestly, remember you asked for it, 25 years approximately. Come on, a little humility maybe. No, you want to conquer my understanding and prove it false. Defeat, I know, Dad, because I'm practically the same exact person as you. Spiritual fulfillment isn't found only in the 4th order. Maybe you would understand it if you ever had the humility to actually read the Gita as it is. I've always wondered why you hated it so much. Maybe this isn't the right way to go about it at all. Honesty is so ugly. Anyway, if you ever did read a devotional explanation of the simple principles of the Gita, you wouldn't have this big 4 orders of life trip. Fulfillment and spiritual realization is open to everyone at every stage by the process of bhakti, devotion. It's only through other processes of self-realization, jnana, dharana, kama, etc., that a person has to first achieve certain levels of maturity, knowledge, sannyasis, whatever. You very accurately point out that my opposite stubborn and pompous attitude. What can I do? I'm working through it. I don't exactly know what you're referring to by saying that even though I'm a brahmachari, I'll pass judgment of right and wrong. I think this is a moot point because you really don't have much of a clue as to the straight bhakti philosophy of Vedanta. I honestly can't see why in the world you would bring it up in your letter. Your opinion of my progress as a writer-songwriter is that I'm faltering. I think that may have something to do with the fact that you are deeply repulsed by topics and conclusions. I happen to like my writing, and so do many others, as in almost 100,000 people. And no, not a bunch of brainwashed geeks who believe all the same things I do anyway. There are even many people who love me, yes, love me. I don't feel bad about me, although you do, and that's precisely why you see me as such a failure. Not because I am one, but because you think I am one. Anyway, you don't really know what the hell I'm doing with my talents, so how could you pass judgment on my productivity? Maybe you don't understand that I spend 2 hours solid every day writing to people who seriously consider me a very important person in their lives. Maybe you don't know or have any access to half the things I write, teach about, or say. Maybe that's why you think my quality and quantity is down. You said that you have no clue as to what I think I am doing. I think that I'm finding myself. You think that's stupid and cheesy and corny? Only because you can't relate to it? It's not corny. I think that I'm deeply satisfied in loving and serving Krishna and the devotees, and everyone else for that matter. I say deeply on purpose, because it is a joy which is not caused or negated by visible ups and downs, which is why you probably can't understand it in a tangible way, because it's not easy for you to relate or see it, unless you want to possibly put away the library books and understand me from me. Why? I think that's the major portion of this letter was about. Because I don't want you to accept as joy, because I don't want what you accept as joy, but what you confidently call a headache. That's why I'm so different from you. What a totally horrible way to talk to you. This completely stinks, but maybe necessary and definitely is honest. I want to share. What do you want me to share? Why is it so horrible for you to share on my terms? Is it a defeat? What's the difference if sharing is really what you want? Why is it so important what is shared? Anyway, I try to share your stuff too. I look at your pictures, I read the articles you send, and I ask about Grandma Mindy and all that stuff. I try. Of course, it's not genuine, spontaneous, wild interest on my part. What do you expect? But you can't deny that I try. I admit that I screwed up on Father's Day. I'm very sorry. For your information, you're very often in my thoughts. Very often, and that's no lie, because why would I bother to lie after dishing out all that junk I just wrote? For your information, yes, 90% of the time is very positive. How should I return your love? By changing back into jeans and long hair? What does that return? I thought I was returning your love. I'm sorry it didn't reach you. It's a combination of your not wanting to accept it from me and my lack of strong signal in sending. Enough soul whipping. I hope this will be over soon, but I guess we should do it for as long as it takes. Love always, Vic. Scorching, painful, ugly. Now at least I knew what he was thinking, but this isn't good. Linda called Vic. I spoke awkwardly and briefly. After a day of mulling it over, I decided I had to be just as honest with him, which meant writing without thinking or editing. My dearest son, I'm proud of our family, the three of us. I'm proud of Mom being so direct and calling you to communicate so directly. I'm proud of you for standing up to your father with such strength. I'm not overjoyed by the letter, but I'm very happy you're able to speak your mind. Boy, I've been thinking about the contents of this letter for a few days, and it was so much easier to think than to write. I'm going to simply type and not edit anything. Not easy for me, but more like Mom, which I like. Failure, that word. I've read your letter only once. It was that easy to finish. That word rings in my head. I don't know why you believe I think of you as a failure. I don't. You aren't what I would have had if life were a play I was writing. Fortunately, I'm not a playwright. I always wanted you to think for yourself. If I had a goal in your upbringing, that was it. So now I must accept the result of your thinking. I do. It may surprise you that I speak about you at work, and people inquire on their own about your progress. Howard, Tim's father, knows of many of your exploits before I do, and he fills me in. He views you with healthy respect. Fred, who is now at home suffering from arthritis, asked about your trip to India when I called him on the phone the other day. I speak of your professional establishment with pride. Being a musician or writer is a profession, and one that takes effort to be accomplished at. You should be proud of your work. I am also proud of your personal traits. The fact that the phrase Hare Krishna throws a bad stereotype into most people's mind is very unfortunate, but something that I can and will deal with. The robes and haircuts and chanting and dancing and old images aren't the problem. It's the distance. Not physical, but mental. It's the distance between us. I know that the distance is inevitable, and that with other choices you may have made, the distance would also be there. It's one of the difficult parts of having a child reach self-sufficiency and become a man. I have a need that you alone can fulfill. Please listen. Learn about me from me, were, as I recall, a phrase in your hell letter. That phrase stood out in the heartache of reading the whole letter. That's it. Exactly what I want. I want to learn about you from you. That is what has been denied me. I don't know what you are thinking or were thinking when you made your decisions, or when you make your current decisions. I know the decisions are yours to make. I don't want to run your life. I want to understand what I can and be a part of what I can. Mom tells me that you said that you believe I have an ulterior motive to everything I say or do. I'm always trying to disprove or belittle or somehow get the advantage, control over you. We've been down this path before, and it's a sad one. You have felt this way for a long time, and it's probably the root of why we can't communicate. I know that when you were younger, I was too strong and inflexible or arrogant or whatever that prevented you from being able to speak to me. That is past. What do I do now? I can't change that, or can I? I do have a motive to much of our communications. It's true I'm not good at idle talk. I'm opposed to your membership in ISKCON. Notice carefully, no bad words or thoughts about Krishna or Vedic anything. I try to show you other avenues or sources that have, in my opinion, merit and value. Why? So that you won't restrict yourself to only the ISKCON stream. Okay, this is all a big contradiction, right? I believe in you, I'm proud of you, and yet I don't like what you're doing. First, my dislike for ISKCON is based on my belief and experience with you alone that ISKCON is an isolationist framework. They want to separate you from the purported evil world, avoid temptation. My problem here is twofold. First, Mom and I are on the wrong side of that barrier. Second, as a writer and a musician, you need a wide range of exposures and influences. To be cut off from everything will leave you exactly that, cut off from everything. Inaccessible to your audience, incapable of communicating. But you do communicate with them. Based on your experiences prior to enlisting in ISKCON, or based on your experiences while on the road. How many people in your audience of 100,000? Quite an impressive number, I must say. Know or care about your trip to India, or the cutesy stories about the area. So my motivation is what I perceive to be your best interests. It will take a lot to convince me that isolation is good for you. It may be a way to solve some problems, but on balance I think it is not the proper avenue for a lifetime. You react poorly to my quotations from Vedic tradition. I learned the 4 phases of life from a book that you gave me for Christmas. Readings in Vedic Literature by Satsarani Dasa Goswami. Perhaps now is a time when you can start to tell me about you. Please explain the proper interpretation of those customs, pages 68 and following, and how they apply to you and your life. I see the 4 orders, as I understand them from those few pages, to be a reasonable prescription for a social and economic order. During the second 25 years, one is working and supporting those of the other ages of life. Without the work done in the second period, all the other periods would not be possible. Why are you excused from this important contribution to society, even if it is restricted to Vedic society? I guess I sounded menacing in those last few words. I don't know how to ask questions civilly, do I? Let me try again. If the 4 orders of life have been found effective and useful over the 5,000 years of Vedic tradition, why would you want to discard that knowledge and tradition? Could you be missing out on something that is really important to life which you have not recognized yet? To help in the communications, I stand ready to answer any question that you have of me. I will not be a defender of American society, but I may be able to shed some light on the better parts of it that you have not noticed. I will answer any question about myself or my thoughts that you want. An aside, not looking back at what I've written is very difficult. This letter probably rambles and jumps about. Anyway, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be spending the weekend in the desert. We'll be staying in La Casa del Zorro, not camping, where they have a blues festival. In the early morning and evenings, we'll explore the desert. In the afternoon, we'll be lazy by the pool, and in the evening, we'll bop to the blues. I'm psyched for it. The weather here has been warm, low 90s, and pretty humid, not like we remember from previous 4 summers. The desert is hot, 105 plus at this time of year. Well, Vic, I guess I'm done for now. I'm glad to hear that we're offering your thoughts, and most of the time, except lately, I guess, you think well of us. I'm hopeful that we'll finally be able to move on to a better relationship. Love always, Dad. Vic responded with, Daddy-o, thank you for your healing letter. Let me just say something that is right in the forefront of my mind. This has to do with when we just talked on the phone. Sometimes I think the communication between us may be difficult because we're just trying too hard. You know what I mean? Trying too hard to communicate and love is something like trying too hard to fall asleep. Anyway, that's just something I realized after reading your letter and then thinking about the phone conversation. The letter itself is easygoing and communicated love, but the phone conversation seemed to be a little tense, maybe because I zonked out from a weekend of hardcore shows. Maybe it has to do with expectations and over-trying. Relaxation is always welcome. What you confided in me from your letter was very heartwarming, and I needed to hear it. Believe it or not, I agree with your critique of ISKCON. Although it's not in line with the conclusions of Krishna conscious philosophy, it can tend to be one of the malpractices ISKCONers introduce into the difficult task of transplanting and translating ancient spiritual practices and social stuff into Potomac, Maryland, 2859 in 1992 AD. I agree that a balanced input is important, especially if I wasn't able to relate to people I'm trying to touch. I had that experience after getting back from India. A period, maybe 7 months went by where I hadn't plucked a single guitar string, did a single stage dive, or even listened to a single distorted open E bar chord. I felt completely out of sync with the hardcore scene. This, as you say, was not exactly the best thing, since I need to be in sync. So I recently started getting heavily into it once again. Yes, even the stage dives, and the result is very effective. One thing I'd like to remind you of, I say remind because you were the one who taught this idea to me. From the outside, everything looks the same. One bottle of wine is just the same as any other to me. But to someone who collects ancient wines, there's all kinds of varieties and differences within that appear to me as homogeneous sameness. It may appear to you that the devotees all have one unified opinion on everything, or at least on most things. But from the inside, I can tell you this is not at all the way it is. You do get exposed to many different outlooks and approaches and opinions, even if you just sit down in front of the deities and never move. Another thing I'd like to bring up is that isolation is a natural phenomenon. It's natural to gravitate towards people who are into similar things that you are. Mentioning the paragraph before last reminded me one of the things I cherish most about our relationship. You would always take the time to thoroughly explain things to me, and you genuinely enjoy teaching me far-out concepts. I always enjoyed listening. I remember you sitting at the Dix Hills house in the kitchen, in a yellow swivel 1950s B-52 chair, closer to the doorway and refrigerator. You're explaining atheism, I think, to a confused Grandma Connie. Beyond the universe, there's just nothing. What do you mean nothing, she would ask. It's just this universe, you gestured with your hands, and when we get to the edge of it, there's nothing beyond that. She couldn't figure out how such a thing as nothing could exist. Of course, you may say she's extremely intelligent for this confusion, but the point is I always enjoyed experiencing your love of thought and explanation. The 4 stages of life are a material arrangement of society that promotes gradual elevation. The goal of the whole process is the final stage, sannyasi. As you go through it all, you become gradually relieved of different ulterior desires and all that type of stuff which would make your ability to engage in spiritual practice unsteady. And finally, you take sannyasi and go for it. So it's kind of like a launching pad. There's one part of the Gita which I really love that has a lot to do with this topic. If you have a well, you don't have to worry about having a full glass of water. In other words, if you have a well, you can always get a glass. In other words, if you have the goal, you don't need the means for achieving that goal anymore. The system of 4 social orders is there for 90% of the population or more who require it, but in rare cases it can be circumvented. Entrance to the 2nd stage is not mandatory. If you can already engage steadily on the platform of spiritual life without distraction, then you don't need to gradually go through everything to get to sannyasi. You already have sannyasi. As far as external social conventions go, I'm not a sannyasi. But internally, I am the sannyasa order. In other words, if you can act in a capacity of pure devotion, being fully satisfied by those activities, then you have transcended social obligation. Vedic society is intended to gradually elevate you to this position, but if you're already there, there's no need to get there. Since it doesn't happen very often, it's no threat to social stability. Does this answer your questions? You have more? It's also explained in the Gita. I'm referring to the Gita a lot because my writing project is translating the Gita into an interview format in simple street language. It's completely exciting and is going very well. I finished the 3rd chapter last night. One way is coming together. The album is visually moving closer to your turntable as the days pass. I'm sorry to hear about Uncle Lou. Thank you so much for the card and the gift. I haven't gotten it physically yet, but I know what it is. I wish I had some questions to ask you. It's not that I'm against asking you questions, just there aren't any in my mind right now. It's been good talking to you like this. Thanks for hanging in. Love always, Vic. The crisis had passed, and we moved a little closer together. Sometimes there is gain from pain.